Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're just letting everyone in, and we have a great program tonight. Lisa Zeiderman is here moderating with our two amazing panelists. We'll give everyone another second.
Welcome to everyone. Welcome, welcome. Should be a great program for everybody. Certainly an interesting one.
It's great to see so many familiar names. If you'd like to come off and show us your faces, we'd love to see faces and smiles, but we understand if you're listening and doing multitasking, which is what we all do. Lots of important information to share tonight. We are thrilled you are here. We'll give it one more moment and then I'll dive in with introductions, which will take a little time. If you have the chance and you're coming in with the name of Savvy Ladies Panel as our generic, please, if you don't mind, putting your name or just your first name would be wonderful. So hi, everyone. I'm Judy Herbst, the Executive Director of Savvy Ladies. And this is our fourth panel in our series of talking about divorce. And tonight it's about surviving divorce, securing your financial future, making sure you are safe when you're doing it. So thrilled to have Nick with us to talk about security and tracking and cybersecurity. So I'm hoping everyone at this point knows what Savvy Ladies is all about. We're a nonprofit. We offer free financial programming like this, but what we have at the heart and soul is our free financial helpline. So feel free to use it at any time during tonight's program or any time in the future. Share it with friends and colleagues in your network. We really want everyone to feel comfortable to use the financial helpline to get matched with a financial advisor to answer your financial question, help you on your financial journey to move you forward. Our panel tonight is around financial security. So important. Lisa Zeiderman, a rock star and a rainmaker, a dear friend, but also our board chair, is leading our panel tonight. And it really will be wonderful for her to dive in and ask the questions about surviving divorce and being your best self and being safe about it. As I said, Lisa is just such an amazing power here at Savvy Ladies. So please join us for many of our other programming that follows and some of our important events that are coming up, such as our Impact Breakfast on March 25th. If you're in New York City, we'll share that information following. We're joined tonight by Nick. Nick has over 30 years of experience in fraud investigations. That's cybersecurity. So all those questions you might have or want to know about tracking of what's being tracked through workplace, your spouse, your former spouse, your kids, how that is affecting you and your security and your privacy, ask away. Those questions are going to be so important for you to understand how to make yourself safe. And we're also joined by Donna Cates. And Donna is a CDFA and a financial advisor. And what's so exciting and how she found Savvy Ladies and how we got connected, this is the power of our networking and the power of Savvy Ladies, is that she was writing a book. And she wrote Divorce Decoded, a manifesto for women navigating divorce and beyond. So perfect for tonight's conversation. And she so graciously looked to seek out Savvy Ladies because as she wrote this book, she wanted to make a donation, a generous donation for her, on the proceeds of her sale back to Savvy Ladies. So I had never had a call like that before. How wonderful to connect with Donna. So I'm so thrilled that she's here on this last panel of ours to share her wisdom, her expertise of helping to guide you through that financial journey of yours. So with that said, please believe in your next beautiful self and come visit the Savvy Ladies Helpline for questions. We all have them at all times, and come visit us and I will share that link with you. So with no further ado, Lisa, I send it over to you and I will eventually stop sharing my screen, but take it away.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Judy. Thanks for the introductions. And thank you, Nick. And thank you, Donna, for coming tonight and speaking. And thank you all for attending. I think it's going to be a great program. Nick, you and I have worked together through many divorces, and you know probably more about security and keeping yourself safe than certainly most people. Nick is our go-to person, our go-to firm, NGH, for anybody that is concerned about their computer being hacked or being stalked through computer, or spyware put on computer, or feeling like they are unsafe in their home from somebody recording them, etc. So we always go to Nick's firm. They're excellent. So I really appreciate it, Nick. So Nick, you're going through a divorce, not you, okay? But somebody is going through a divorce, and they want to feel secure about their data and their privacy, particularly, frankly, their data and their privacy with their attorney, right? Because now you've got this other person that you are emailing and texting with, and you are telling them your most secrets of all, okay? And you want to feel that this is truly your attorney-client privilege information. But lots of things happen, as you're aware. So maybe you can share with us how to make sure that your attorney-client privileged information is secure.
Sure, and thank you, and it's great to be here again on another fantastic Savvy Ladies panel. It's always a pleasure to do this every year. And let me say this: we counsel people all the time who are going through divorces and other difficult situations and otherwise about personal cybersecurity. I'm going to start with three really critical basic things that we tell everybody, whether they're going through a divorce or not, that if everyone did, okay, they would reduce their risk of being hacked or compromised, whether it's by a no good estranged spouse, ex-spouse, former significant other, or just some bad actor in general. So I'll start off with three key things like that. And the first one is passwords. Everyone's probably heard that 1,000 times, but it is unbelievably important to have complex, unique, meaning different for every account you have, passwords for everything you use. Your email, your banking, your online account, your iCloud, your Dropbox, whatever it is you have, because we all have so many of these accounts today, and many of them are interconnected. You have to have complex, unique passwords, okay? Now, everybody, I think, knows what a complex password is because they've been forced to make them on occasion for their bank or someone else, right? Uppercase, lowercase letters, numbers, and some special characters. And the longer, the better within reason, at least 10, 12, 14 characters. Now, when I say that, people lose their minds and their hair stands on edge. They say, how am I going to remember all those passwords? It's impossible. I'd have to write them down somewhere, and that's not very secure. The answer is no, you don't. There are very simple, very secure programs called password managers, like LastPass and RoboForm, right? They're cheap. You install them. They go across all your devices, your phone, your tablet, your laptop, okay? You make up one really secure passphrase, right? Like, and they give you instructions how to do that. And that's the only thing you ever have to remember again. And then the program will help you generate unique, complex passwords for every account you have. And you do it once, takes a half hour or an hour, and then you never have to remember to do it again. And when some account prompts you, oh, it's time to change your password, you don't have to think one up. You don't have to do anything except go click, click, generate a new complex password for that account. It's saved, and that's it. Okay? Very simple and very effective. Number two, MFA, or multi-factor authentication. Everybody knows what that is, whether they're familiar with that acronym or not. When you go to log into something and you put in your username and password, usually you're banking, all right, because that's where it's forced, or maybe if you have a cryptocurrency account, they insist that now we have to send you a text message, right, or a multi-factor authentication code, even though you put in the correct password before we let you in. All right. Banks and a handful of others force you to do that. I'm here to tell you that you need to do that, especially if you're in a divorce situation, on every single account you have. Every email account, every online account, Dropbox, OneDrive, your Microsoft account, of course, all your banking accounts and all your other financial accounts, but every single account that you have that has a username and password, you have to just go on and check and see if they support MFA. And if they do, you have to enable it. It is the best protection you can have against someone without authorization accessing your account, including a no good, estranged spouse or person in a domestic situation like that. And if it is possible, okay, the traditional text type 2FA or MFA is where they text you a code. That's okay. It's way better than not having MFA at all. But if you have the option, put Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator app on your phone and use that instead of the SMS or text-based 2FA, because if someone hijacks your phone number, which happens more than you might believe, right? Especially in domestic type situations and also in fraud where they're trying to hack into your bank account. That's the other big place we see it. They contact AT&T or Verizon, and if they have enough information about you, they may be able to get some person at Verizon to transfer your cell phone over to them, all right? Even for a short period, that's all they need. And they can get your 2FA code that way, but not if you're using an authenticator app, because that's based in the device. So that's the second thing that's critically important. The third thing, and again, this doesn't apply to just people going through a divorce. Everyone should do this. Never, ever connect to a free or public Wi-Fi. Not from your phone, not from your tablet, not from your computer. And again, people go, well, I travel a lot. I'm all the way out. What am I supposed to either tether to your phone and use your cellular data from your phone, or get a hotspot from your wireless carrier if the tethering to your phone isn't fast enough. I can't stress this enough. We do a lot of cybersecurity event investigations, right? We're investigating how somebody got hacked in the first place. I'm not saying this is necessarily in divorce cases so much, but in general, you would not believe how many hacking cases, when we track down the point of origin of the hack, where the hackers initially got into this person's stuff and then got everywhere and into everything. It's from a public Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or in a hotel that's notorious for not being safe, okay? Or the public Wi-Fi in an airport, etc. Don't do it. And a lot of people, when I say that, say to me, well, I know, but I have a VPN on my computer, or even I have a VPN app on my phone, so I'm safe, right? The answer is absolutely not. A VPN is very, very good protection between you and some site you visit on the internet or other stuff, that you're connecting to on the internet, as far as them not knowing who you are. And it's also very good protection of you having a secure connection to some third-party site, like your bank, for example. It's excellent, but it does absolutely nothing to improve your security if you connect to a not secure public Wi-Fi and think you're okay because you're on VPN. VPN only protects your internet traffic. not your local traffic between your device and the Wi-Fi network you just connected to. So those three things are very, very important. Now, just one or two more things that are really important and specific to people going through a divorce, like Lisa was asking about. Number one, the minute, even if you don't suspect anybody's hacking or compromising your data, right? Just to be on the safe side, the minute you are in the divorce or know you're going to be getting involved in a divorce situation, number one, go get yourself a new device. I'm not saying you have to get all new devices. Go get a new device, whether it's a laptop or an iPad, let's say, okay? Set it up and set it up clean. Don't put all your old pre-existing accounts and Apple ID and whatnot in it. Just set it up clean and new. Go online, create a new Gmail account that you never used before, that doesn't have your name and everything in it. And for starters, use that new clean device with a brand new fresh email account to communicate with your attorneys and other professionals your very sensitive information. And don't put that email account on your phone that you've had for 3 years while you were living in the house with the spouse, and your other computer, because it's convenient. We understand that many of these things are not particularly convenient, but they're necessary. And fortunately, if you have great counsel like Miller Zeiderman, it's not going to be forever. Your divorce will be over sooner or later, and you can kind of go back, hopefully, to doing things on a more convenient basis. But those are the basics that we recommend. And if everybody, there's probably 100 other things, but if everybody did just those things, we probably reduce the risk by 80 or 90% from most of what we see.
So, Nick, first of all, there's a lot of questions I know in the chat, and I'm going to get to them as much as we can for sure. Okay, so don't fear, everybody. I want to ask you, Nick, because this happens a lot in cases, when people share family accounts. So can you explain, first of all, what a family account is? Okay, and then and you and I have had these cases, right, where the family account, you are texting or emailing your attorney, or you're texting or emailing your boyfriend or girlfriend, frankly, or you are talking about your ex-husband to be or whatever, and it comes through on your children's iPad, okay? And all of a sudden your children's iPad becomes the source of great evidence. And how does that happen? And what can people do to make sure it doesn't happen? Because I can't tell you how common it is.
So what Lisa's talking about, and she and I have both seen this in real cases more than once, many times actually. This can happen whether we're talking about Apple devices and iCloud or Android devices and Google, but it happens a lot more on the Apple side, just because in the Apple universe, as I'm sure everyone realizes, the devices and the accounts are incredibly interconnected. All right, by default. That's how Apple wants it. That's how they think you, the customer, want it. And in some circumstances, that may be true. If everything is hunky-dory and, mom and dad and the kids and everybody's great and there's no divorce or anything going on, maybe that's okay from a convenience point of view, maybe. But certainly, the minute you're thinking or knowing that you're going into a divorce situation, different rules have to apply right away, immediately. The first of which is you cannot share your Apple ID with, certainly not with your estranged or soon to be estranged spouse. And if you ever have, then you need to stop using that and create a new one right away. But you cannot share your Apple ID with your child or put your Apple ID onto a child's device, iPhone, iPad, MacBook, whatever it is, depending on the age of the child and what devices they have. And that means Not, well, you can't do it regularly. It means you can't ever do it, period, full stop. Because the minute you take your Apple ID and put it into, your 12-year-old son's iPad because he doesn't have his own Apple ID and he wants to be able to download a game from the App Store or what have you, some innocent reason, you've now connected in a way that you couldn't even begin to fathom. You've now connected his device to your iCloud and Apple ID account. His device is more than likely now going to become a trusted device on your account. And someone could simply, or your estranged spouse who takes that iPad, perhaps innocently, just because they want to see what the kid is doing, and click, click, click. And before you know it, all of your text messages, maybe emails, and other data are all syncing down to your 12-year-old son's device. All because you put your Apple ID into that device one time. You just can't do it. Whatever you as a parent in consultation with your attorneys or whoever determine is age-appropriate devices for your children to have, and if they're going to have Apple devices, they must have their own Apple ID that's theirs, not yours, not the other spouse's, not once, not ever. You can't ever mix them. And if, as I said, if you ever shared your Apple ID with your children or on your children's devices or with your now estranged spouse during the course of the marriage, as painful as this is, and I know it's inconvenient and painful, you have to reset your Apple ID account, but we recommend stop using it and create a new one. Okay. It's very difficult to transfer your data safely and securely over from one Apple ID account to another, but there are people that can help you. We can help you or recommend someone who can help you get that done. As inconvenient as it is, it's that important, because otherwise you risk a device floating around out there with your text messages, emails, photos, and all kinds of other things on it, in the hands of your former spouse, and frankly, things that your children should never see, whether you're going through a divorce or not. So that's a big, big issue. And I'm glad you asked that, Lisa.
So, okay, so I'm going to ask to simplify this because I'm not a techie and I don't know how many people are, but here's my question. You're looking at your phone or your iPad, and where do you see this Apple ID? Okay.
Oh.
And how do you figure out whether you have the same Apple ID on these devices or you don't? And where do you go to get this all looked at? Okay, Nick?
Great. Sorry. I should have mentioned that. I took it for granted and I shouldn't. Your Apple ID, right? If you have an Apple device, if you have an iPhone, an iPad, MacBook, an iMac, you almost certainly have an Apple ID from when you set that device up. That Apple ID is going to be an email address. It must, by definition, be a working email address. Doesn't have to be an Apple email. Doesn't have to be at iCloud.com, etc. It could be your Google. It could be edhimanitis@gmail.com. But it's going to be in your device, in settings general, and then right there at the top on almost every iOS, it's going to say your Apple ID or iCloud, and you just click on that and it's going to tell you what Apple ID is in that device, and that's going to be an email, right? So that is your username for your iCloud. We call it your Apple ID, all right? And it's critical that that is yours and yours alone. Whatever that is, that's what your iCloud is registered under. That's you. That's what I'm saying. You cannot put that into your child's device or anyone else's device ever for any reason. Because if you do, you risk everything that's in your iCloud can eventually get onto that other device. So that's where it is, and that's what we mean, that's what it looks like. It's an email address, that you or someone who set the device up for you maybe would have put in there, and they asked you, oh, what's your email account? They might not have even said Apple ID, and they just did it for you. Maybe you had your kid do it or your friend do it. But that's where you look, that's where it is, and that's what we're talking about, and that has to be yours and yours alone.
So Nick, here's my question. A lot of our clients end up, they call me sometimes in the middle of the night, I will say, or text me in the middle of the night, and they say, I just said something to somebody and my spouse knows it. Like, and when I say said, okay, maybe it's something that they actually said, or it's something that they wrote or texted, okay? And they now are suspicious that their spouse is tracking them in some way.
Right.
What do they do? I mean, besides call you, because that's obviously what we tell them what to do, but besides call you.
I'll answer the question by telling you exactly what we do when someone calls us, when you tell someone to call us, because that just happened. That'll answer the question, I think. So the very first thing we do, because the devil is very much in the details here, is we ask exactly the questions Lisa was just asking quickly, but we go through them slowly. We say, now stop. Was this thing that your estranged spouse knew, was that something you only said verbally on a phone call? And were you talking on your cell phone? Were you talking on your house phone in the den downstairs when you had this conversation? We have to go through all that, because depending on what it is, we can then make very informed presumptions that either, well, there's a listening device in the house, because if you were on the house phone, nobody taps a house phone anymore. It just doesn't really happen. There'd be some kind of listening device in the house. If you were on, the house phone downstairs in the den, and that's the only time you said X was on that conversation, and now the spouse knows it, and the only way they know it, if there was if no one overheard you and repeated it to him, then there's a listening device in the house, and we need to come sweep the house and find it. But if you were talking on your cell phone at the time, then possibly there could be some very insidious spyware on your phone that would allow the spouse to have actually listened in on that call, or even recorded that call and listened to it later. That is possible. We've seen it. A lot of times it turns out when we drill down into this, it's something, well, I did say it, but I also texted about it, and I sent a couple of emails about it. Okay. Now, we then say, okay, we're going to assume that because it's much more likely and easier than the other alternatives, that the spouse got this information from the text or the email. Now we want to examine your phone, because we want to see if there's spyware on there where they could have intercepted even some of the simpler spyware that's easier to get on the phone, that can allow them to see your texts, not record your phone calls. And then we want to examine your iCloud account itself, not the phone, the account, because I would say 7 out of 10 times when we see this, and the other spouse has intercepted, let's say, text messages, it's not because they actually got spyware on your phone. The Apple devices are getting very, very difficult now to get any kind of working spyware on there. It's still possible. It's very difficult. But this is going back to the Apple ID thing. If your spouse got a hold of your Apple ID and password, there's a very good chance they access your iCloud account. Maybe they're routinely accessing your iCloud account. If they are, they can read all your text messages and a lot of other things, everything that's syncing from your phone. So we need to check that account. If it was in an email, we need to examine that email account, and we may need to examine your device, and maybe need to sweep the house. Depends on all those circumstances.
So Donna, you are actually, so we've got security and safety from Nick in terms of literally security and safety. And then we've got security and safety from you in terms of financial safety. So kind of tell us what you do to help people plan for their post-divorce life. Because a lot of people here are either starting a divorce, going through a divorce, maybe have finished their divorce. How do you help them move along now to their post-divorce life financially?
Great question. And I have to start by saying, God bless you, Nick, because the work that you do makes my head hurt. But I'm grateful for you. But the work that I do, on the other hand, I'm actually working with women when they're in the process of divorce to help them make smart, informed decisions about what they're negotiating so that you don't end up with a short end of the stick when the divorce is finalized. So ideally, you would be working with someone like me with the CDFA designation while you're going through the process. But if not, that's okay. You're going to end up with what you end up with. And then you want to definitely be engaged with a financial professional who has the skill sets to help you do some planning. So whatever you end up with, it's this bucket. The first thing for you to realize is that if before you had one household and you, whether two of you were working or just one, now you've got two households and the same amount of income is supporting two households. So life as you've known it is going to look different. So the sooner you come to terms with that, the best. Now, one of the things that I always recommend to folks is to, number one, you got to know what all your assets are, how they're invested, how they're titled. But beyond that, you need to know where your money is being spent. I mean, down to the nuts and bolts. We had the pest control guy show up at our house last week. If you were asking me to fill out a financial affidavit and I was having to say that I pay for that, that never would have been front of mind. But we literally want you to identify everything, because what we've got to do is figure out, with your income, whether it's limited income or a lot of income, do you have enough cash flow coming in to sustain your current standard of living? So you've got to know that. Now, sometimes I'm the messenger that has to say, we're going to have to find some ways to cut back. And that could be anything from downsizing your home to not getting your nails done as frequently. I'm never one to tell anybody how to spend their money, but I want to help them make smart choices so that when they do spend money, that money is actually going to the things that are priority for them and helping them to live life, with their values in mind.
So Donna, here's the question that comes up so often for so many of our clients is, should we keep the family home, right? That's a question that I think almost in every case, I hear it, right? I hear it at the beginning of the case. Should I stay in the apartment or the house while I'm going through the divorce? Should I move out? Should I sell the house when we're done? Should I buy him out of the house? Should I, should I come up with another idea about the house? How do I keep my kids in the school district? How long should I stay in the house? What do you have to say about the marital home? Is it practical? Is it, does it make sense? When doesn't it make sense? I guess is my biggest question. When doesn't it make sense to keep the marital residence?
And Lisa, this is such an important question because, again, it's an emotional decision. I think a lot of people that struggle with making a decision about what to do with a marital home when they're divorcing, it's mostly because of the kids and not wanting to disrupt their lifestyle, taking them out of the only house that they've known, possibly having to move them into a new school district. But there are so many things that you must understand when you're making this decision. So I'm going to give you an example of a client I was working with. She said, not no, but heck no, I'm not giving up my home because I don't want to move the kids out of this really nice school district. district. So she had made that decision. Unfortunately, she didn't know whether or not she could qualify for the mortgage. The mortgage was currently in her name and her spouse's name, but because they were divorcing and she was electing to keep the home, a couple of things are happening. Number one, she's going to have to get the mortgage refinanced in her name. Number two, she's actually going to have to buy out his share of the equity. And oh, by the way, when she buys him out, she can't use an already existing marital asset that's half hers, half his. So logically, what most people will do is they will borrow more money against the home. So now they end up with even a higher mortgage. And that's if they can get approved for it. Now, right now, interest rates are much higher than they were 4 or 5, 6 years ago. So you've got to take into consideration, you might have a 2.5% mortgage right now if you're lucky, but if you're having to refinance today, if you have good credit, your interest rate might be 7% or higher if you don't. And another thing that I think is really important for women, especially those that haven't been the major breadwinner, is to know that for you to get approved for a mortgage, you're going to have to show a solid record of income for at least 12 months. The mortgage company doesn't care about anything else. This is something that you need to know. If you've not been working and you now have a job, that's great. You're not getting that mortgage the day the divorce is finalized. It's going to be at least a year. But even on top of that, another complexity is that if you're getting any type of alimony or maintenance support, even child support, that has got to be income that you're going to have for the length of the mortgage. Some of us have shorter term marriages. We might be getting 5 years of alimony, maybe 10 years. But if we're only getting 5 years of alimony income and we're using that income as a basis to qualify for a mortgage, the mortgage company is not going to use it because guess what? It ends in 5 years. That mortgage is 30 years. So before you make that decision, you really have to understand what all the moving pieces are associated with it. Can you afford the maintenance on the home? I had one woman that ended up having to sell her home post-divorce because she didn't take into consideration all the expenses of maintaining the home, the pool, the 5-acre yard, all of those things. And then, let's see, she ended up selling the house at a loss because she had to take out more of a loan to buy out her husband. So there was no equity in the home when she sold it. So that was horrible. Lisa, to your question about, what makes the most sense? Number one, don't be emotional about this decision. You've got to do the number crunching and figure out whether or not you qualify for a mortgage on your own first. That's the first step. And then the second step would be, what's going to be the easiest and cleanest way to divide this asset? So it might, even though you don't want to sell it and you don't want to move your kids, it might be easiest and less litigious if you just say, let's put the house on the market, we're going to get what we get, and then we're going to divide that asset. And, most of us, we're in equitable division, states, but we're always going to start with that 50-50%, division. But it might be that you decide to keep more of the home equity and give up some of something else. That's where I come in as a CDFA to help you make the most informed decision on how to equalize, the assets that you're getting. But the home is like you said, Lisa, it's one of the most complicated things. And what makes it even more complicated is the fact that we're emotional beings and we're attached to our homes for a number of reasons.
So it's interesting. So a couple of things, Donna, that you mentioned, which I think are important. So with interest rates being as high as they are now, people are looking at the family home very differently. And whether it's an apartment or a house, the fact that the interest rates are no longer 2.5 or 3%, and now that we're looking at 7 and 8%, it may be unaffordable, frankly, or it may be just too much of a struggle, or it may be something that you might not even qualify for. And so it's very important to work with your bank early on to see what they will do. In terms of, somebody's just asking this question, it's a great question, is equity in the home the amount you paid off from the original purchase price, or does the current estimated value of the home become a factor in this? So for us, okay, in New York, I'm going to say that we do the house or apartment is appraised very close to the time when you're either signing the agreement or you're going to trial. And sometimes you might have 2 or 3 appraisals, depending upon how long your case takes. And you take that appraised price, and then you subtract from that the mortgage or the home equity lines of credit
Right.
that are against the home. And that is your equity in this sense. Okay. Now keep in mind, you're also going to have closing costs if you're selling. You might have transfer costs. You're going to have the broker's costs, all the usual closing costs. So your equity is even going to be lower. But if you're going to be buying out your spouse in New York, I'm going to say this for New York, we don't look at everything else. We don't look at the broker's costs. We don't look at capital gains taxes. We don't look at any of that. You're literally going to take the appraised price minus any mortgage or a home equity line of credit, which is now going to be yours to keep, okay? And you're going to actually divide up what's the remaining, and that's your buyout price, and that's the equity in your home. Okay, the equity in your home. So that's the answer to that question. I hope that answered Jessica's question, actually. But really important, now you've got, if you go to sell your home, right, Donna, you're going to have all these other costs that I just talked about, right? So capital gains costs, right? So what happens, what's the difference between selling it when you are married versus selling it when you're not married?
This can be huge, especially if there is a significant amount of gain in your home. So, I could use another client example. I had someone who lived in an older home here in a prestigious area. They actually bought the home about 40 years ago and paid $100,000 for it. Today it's worth 1.5 million. Now, that's probably, minuscule to compare to the New York City stuff, but for them, it was a lot. So she elected to keep the home. She gave up other assets. So the equity, she just kept 100% of the home. So she has an illiquid asset. That house is not going to pay bills. It's worth a lot, but she can't stroke a check against it unless she goes and get that home equity line like Lisa was just mentioning. Now, but if she keeps the home as a part of the divorce, and now she is the sole owner, and she goes to sell that home, she is only going to get a tax exclusion on the gains of $250,000. Now, had they elected to sell that house as a couple before the divorce was finalized, they could have doubled up on that $250,000 exclusion, and $500,000 of that gain would not have been taxed. And that's the thing, is we're looking at long-term capital gains. It's either 15% tax on the gain, or it's 20% if you're a high income earner. So that you may keep it today, but if you know there's a possibility that you're going to be selling it soon and there is a lot of equity, you might want to give that a second thought.
Donna, when's the best time for someone going through or thinking about a divorce to start working with a financial advisor? Talk to us about that.
Okay, I'm a little biased, but I would say, the soon as you know that you're thinking about it, and hear my hearts, lady, because this is a thing. I've been doing this work for 25 years, and we women, regardless of whether we're doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, whatever, we have a tendency to put our head in the sand. So a lot of times we're handing off the financial responsibility, the more complex stuff for our household, to our spouses, not because we're not capable, it's just what we do. So now, divorce comes up, whether it's your idea or your spouse's, now you're blindsided. Oh my gosh, I have no clue what our life insurance looks like. I don't even know where the life insurance policy is located, these types of things. So I would say if there's an inkling in your mind that divorce is on the table, that's the time to start working with an advisor. I can help you with knowing what financial documents to be gathering before the D word is even said. And that's often important because as soon as you and your spouse start talking about divorce, everybody's going to start socking information away. And if that happens, it's not the end of the world because you can pay someone like Lisa to get it for you through interrogatories or depositions. But wouldn't it be a lot easier if you just went to the attorney and said, here's all my financial data. Some of it might be old. That's all I could find. But here's the really recent stuff. Now your attorney is not having to go on a wild goose chase hunting for information and hoping that your husband is going to pull up his big boy britches and play nice. So we're saving money with your attorney. But that would be an ideal situation to me. But I have effectively worked with plenty of people who are working with an attorney. The attorney says, I don't want to spend my time, doing all the number crunching. You would be better served by a CDFA. And then I'll walk side by side with you and the attorney and looking at all of the different scenarios that we might be considering for your divorce. So ideally, beforehand, it's never too late. And if you get to the other side of the divorce, it's still not over because we still have time to make things happen for you.
So let me ask you a question, Nick. If you have someone who is not revealing anything, and they have some sort of a business, or they've got, that they've got all their stuff on their computer, how do you work with an attorney in terms of getting information? If you do.
We do. And it depends a lot on the circumstances because, as you know, and I'll say for the benefit of everybody on the program, anything and everything we do has to be 100% legal and above board, right? We don't ever get involved in anything where, the client's, well, we don't have to tell the attorney. No. We don't do anything like that. And you don't want to do anything like that either, because the trouble you're going to get into is worse than whatever you hope to gain. So if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of the financial information, your spouse, maybe runs their own business, you don't have access to it. Maybe it's early on, and like Donna was saying, that divorce may be coming down the road, but no one's dropped the D bomb yet. That may be a time. We have to talk to your attorneys. We have to look at the circumstances, but maybe there's what the law calls a family computer, right? Maybe there's one or more computing devices in the house that your spouse uses and you've used, maybe one of your kids has used, etc. There's a lot of factors that go into determining that is a legitimate family computing device. But the key thing is that it's in the marital home. That's the big one. So if there's a computing device in a marital home that may very well have relevant financial information on it, we can come in and do what we call a clandestine imaging. So, for example, we can come in when the spouse is not there, and we can forensically image that computer. And then, in consultation with the attorneys, we can either hold on to it until the case gets started, and then, get it, judicial relief or whatever, or we may just, under the circumstances, if the attorney says so, choose to examine what's on that hard drive. And we may find a lot of the financial information that the client didn't know about, or knows there should be life insurance or these investment accounts, but has no idea what they are or where they might be. And we may very well be able to get that data in that way.
So, okay, so let's just go back for this, because I think this is really an important area. And I'm going to say there's a lot of litigation on this particular area, right, Nick?
Yep.
Right, so going on your spouse's computer in the first place, right? So you and I have had these cases. Somebody goes on their spouse's computer, they may know the password. They may know the password because they have the password. They may guess at the password. Maybe the computer is left open. There is all sorts of scenarios, right? I think we've heard them all. And they find information on the computer. What's the first rule of thumb about all of this?
All right. Here's my answer. A lot of people may not like to hear this, but I think most lawyers like to hear it or would agree with it. My answer is don't do it.
Thank you.
This is not an area for self-help. I'm going to go on the computer in the house, or I'm going to go on my spouse's laptop. Even if the circumstances are such that, well, the spouse's laptop is in the marital home, and hey, he gave me the password once and let me use it. Technically, that's a family computer now, but that doesn't mean that you, individual who doesn't know what you're doing, is not a professional and not an independent third party, should be doing this. You shouldn't, because there may be legal issues that you're not aware of and certainly not, competent to determine. That's why we have lawyers to figure these things out. And from a technical point of view, you make one mistake. Look, if we come in and image the computer, okay, we're doing a certain thing a certain way because we know it's okay to do it that way. If you go on the computer and you start doing something that is legally determined to be intercepting your spouse's emails, for example, that's a crime under New York law and federal law. So the difference between you trying to get information off the computer and doing it wrong in some way that, unbeknownst to you, violates a criminal law, and us doing it in a way that we know is legit and acceptable, it's, night and day. It's, the difference between getting good, useful, valuable, legitimate information for your case and you potentially getting in big trouble, and actually not being able to use the information you got anyway, because there are laws that say if you got it the wrong way, it's not even admissible in court and you can't use it.
Exactly. And by the way, Nick and I didn't rehearse this. We've
No.
just lived through it. So
We've been through it enough to
we've
know how
lived through
he
it.
does things.
Exactly. We didn't rehearse these answers, but in all seriousness, this, I can't tell you how many times people say, well, I can just go on his computer or I can just go on her computer, whatever. It's not that simple. You're going through a divorce. There is an expectation of privacy. And, let me tell you, it is an expensive way to learn that you shouldn't be on the computer, because the motion practice will fly, the judges will not be happy, you will not be happy. It's not worth it. And once you have actually gone in and there is attorney-client privileged information, you've seen what he and his attorney are writing to each other, and you think this is going to make your case. And believe me, it's not, because you can't use it. You won't be able to use it. And you're going to put yourself and your attorney perhaps in a bad situation. So be super careful and speak to your attorney about it, who will then speak to Nick or someone at Nick's firm who will be helpful about this. But it really is a serious situation. So be careful about it. So Donna, in terms of figuring out how much do people need, okay, in order to live their lives, okay, I'm not going to say the same lifestyle, but perhaps close to the lifestyle, or in something that's reasonably close to the lifestyle. How do you determine how much the number is? What do you do?
That actually goes back to that ever important list of expenses. And I know a lot of attorneys refer to it as a budget, but most people find that word cringeworthy. So, most of us don't operate by a budget. We're just spending and getting what we need when we need it, and then we figure out how we're going to pay for it. But the reality is, this is why literally giving, the microscope look at where all of where your money's being spent now, understanding what it's truly costing you to live, that's going to give you your baseline. You're going to know, if I kept everything exactly like it is today, nothing changes, this is what I need. And then you've got this much income, and then you've got that much of a deficit. That's what's actually used by the attorneys to help negotiate for that alimony support payment that you might get if your spouse or soon-to-be ex-spouse has the ability to pay. So it's not just a matter of you defining what that need is, but he's also, or she has to have the ability to pay that as well. But without that baseline, you're really just saying, this is what I want. And what I want is not necessarily good enough.
Now, sometimes people don't get alimony, frankly, because they get enough assets that the assets give off enough income. So how do you calculate, what do you do to calculate how much income, right, the assets are going to produce, and how much in assets do you need to live out your life, essentially? Does that make sense, Donna, what I just asked?
Yes, absolutely does. And this is the thing, is there are so many variables in that. There's not going to be one answer for everybody. It's going to be depending on your circumstances. And what I mean is that depending on what those assets are, if they're invested in aggressive, investments, aggressive investments might give you a higher return over time, but they also might lose a lot. If they're more conservative, you might be eking out, a 3 or 4% tax return. So what we have to do is literally look at all of the investments that you currently have. We figured out what you need, and then we look at and say, okay, how are we going to generate that amount of income from these investments? And there's either enough or there's not enough. If there's not enough, we figure out, how do we increase the value? Do we make it more aggressive? Do we use some protected products that might be appropriate to give you some guarantees? There are different investment structures that allow us to give you a little bit more sense of security, but there's no one answer. But the thing is knowing what you're typically spending, knowing what your income sources are, and then knowing what your investments can produce. Now, someone that does the work that I do, we're going to be able to advise you on how to adjust those investments that you have so that they meet your needs and hopefully fit your risk tolerance profile.
Now, in turn, I'm going to go through some of these questions. So there is a question. My husband is an IT professional. This is for you, Nick, who manages all of our email, phones, etc., and has a history of being controlling, quote, with the best of intentions. Can you tell me if he's watching my emails, texts, Google history, etc., is using incognito mode really safe? I don't know what incognito mode is, but I gather you might.
I do. And the answer is, if the spouse set all those things up and manages them the way I interpret the question is saying, incognito mode is not helping you at all. My recommendation would be, if there's any concern based on what that person just said, they should get a new device, create a brand new email account on that new device that they set up and they manage, and just use it on that one device until whatever else gets figured out and they're either no longer cohabitating, or if they've already split up and this is now like a leftover situation where, the person who asked the question maybe is, and we get this a lot, still in the marital residence, the estranged spouse is gone, the divorce is not final yet, but they're done and out of the house, or maybe the divorce just got finalized, but they're still concerned that they may be monitoring them. Everything's going to have to be redone. I'm going to have to get somebody to come in, not necessarily someone like us, because that's just an IT thing, but you got to start from scratch. And when we say from scratch, we mean call Verizon, have them come in and put in a new internet router, and then have a competent IT person come in and set up everything all again. You can keep your email address, etc., but you'll have to change passwords and, you know, change everything. So the guy who set it up, in this case, the estranged spouse, definitely no longer has access to any of it.
And somebody asked, how often should one change their passwords? So how often should one change their
My
passwords?
answer is it, are you going through a divorce? And is it acrimonious? My general answer is, you know, every 3 to 6 months, just in general, that's, you know, what most people can do and be safe if you have complex passwords in the first place, you know, barring anything, you know, that occurs to make you know you need to change your password. But if you're going through a divorce, and this is one of the reasons why I say use something like LastPass or RoboForm, because it's so painless. You could literally change all your passwords for all your accounts with no pain and virtually no effort in 5 minutes. And you could do it every month just to be safe.
So Judy actually made a note. So I'm giving you credit here, Judy, that she's heard LastPass has been hacked. Any information on that? What you're feeling on that, Nick?
Okay, here's my, yeah. And this always comes up. Here's my feeling. Yes, LastPass got hacked once. They spend millions, probably tens of millions of dollars on security. They did get hacked, and some of their customer information got leaked. Not their customers' master passwords, because they don't even have them. These LastPass, and I'm not favoring one over the other. LastPass is good. RoboForm is another very good one. They are your master password that you create when you set this up is fully encrypted on any device that you have it on, and the company RoboForm, LastPass, they don't even have it. So if you look, that's the thing. If you lose that, you're in trouble. But it's only one password you have to remember. My point is this: the benefit you get from a security point of view of doing this so vastly outweighs any risk of RoboForm or LastPass getting hacked and losing your actual passwords, which they don't even have in what we call clear text. They only have them in an encrypted form. You shouldn't even think about that. It's the balance is so much in favor of using it that it's not even funny.
So I think we've come to the hour, Judy, and I'd like you just, if you would, kind of go through what some of the programs that we have coming up are.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, everyone. This was very, very informative. And the one thing I want to add, which I know as you're speaking income, Donna, and Lisa always says this, so I'm going to say it now, is it might be time to consider earning your own income if you're not already working. So if you are thinking about a divorce or going through it, it is really important to start looking to see how to earn your own income, and how that there's many back to work programs that many institutions offer, and they offer back to work career planning. We work with Dress for Success. That's one of the back to work programs. We know JP Morgan has a back to work, Goldman Sachs. So things to consider. Those are great questions to bring to the helpline. Savvy Ladies offers a number of programs. What we're excited about that's coming up is we have our Impact Breakfast. So if you are in the New York City area, we would love you to attend our Impact Breakfast, which is on March 25th. So be on the lookout for more information. As we head into March, it is Women's International History Month, and we recognize and really support women of impact. And that's you got, everyone is making an impact. So look for us on social. If you're not following us on LinkedIn, at Savvy Ladies or Instagram and Instagram stories. Make sure to follow us because we will be posting a lot of all of our events there, and also encouraging and positive words to really help you make an impact as you continue on your journey. And April moves us into Financial Literacy Month. So we'll have many programs coming up for March. So be on the lookout, sign up and follow Savvy Ladies is the best advice.
I want to answer a question because it's such an important question that came up. Does earning your own income put you at a disadvantage to getting spousal support in the judge's eyes? Okay, so it's an incredibly important question. We get asked this all the time. Everybody who's on here, I'm going to tell you, unless you are truly disabled and unable to work, the judge is going to impute some income to you, whether you work or you don't work. They're going to come up with a number by hearing you speak, by looking at you, by looking at your educational background, your work history. They are going to come up with a number by applying minimum wage and then adding some. They're going to have a number. And whether you work or you don't work, that number is going to factor into your spousal support and your child support. So in my mind, much better to be working, because frankly, it's irritating most often to a judge that someone is not working. Consider the fact the judge is working. Okay, literally the judge is working, they're taking care of the kids, they're up on the bench, they're thinking, why aren't these people working? It goes on every day, we hear it from the judges. So the answer is that working is better. Yes, you may get a tiny bit less in terms of spousal support, but frankly, not usually, because you're going to get that income imputed to you anyway. And you might be able to show the judge, this is all I can earn now, because I've gone out and I've looked for a job and this is all I can earn. And my spouse is earning so much more, and so therefore I should get the spousal support. Donna, somebody's asking for your email in here.
May I put that in?
Please do.
Okay, I'm going to put it in the chat, but it's donna@wwbpartners.com. And I
Wonderful.
couldn't speak and talk, type at the same time. So here we come. Okay.
And Nick's information is there too.
And we have recorded this, so we will be sharing the recording with everyone who has registered.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes.
My pleasure. It's always great to see you, and keep up the great work, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Donna. Thank you all.